The Young and the Restless spoilers. Diane Jenkins stood in disbelief, her chest tight with a fury she could barely contain. The humiliation Jack Abbott had inflicted on her in front of their colleagues at Jabot echoed in her mind, over and over again. She had been ousted, discarded, and betrayed by the very man she once loved. The public nature of her fall from grace only made it worse. Diane was at a crossroads, torn between her pain and her need for revenge. For a moment, she didn't know where to turn, but then the realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. There was one person who would savor Jack's destruction just as much as she would. Victor Newman. Victor and Jack's rivalry was infamous, a war that had raged for decades between the Newman and Abbott families. The animosity between them ran so deep that no insult, no sabotage, and no betrayal seemed too low. Diane knew this well, and in her desperation, she decided to reach out to the one man who despised Jack more than anyone else. It was a risky move, but if anyone could help her destroy Jack, it was Victor. Diane's dark alliance. Victor Newman was not surprised when Diane contacted him. He had been anticipating this moment for years, watching silently as cracks began to appear in Jack and Diane's seemingly solid marriage. He had always believed that Diane would eventually turn against Jack. She had too much ambition, too much hunger for power to stay loyal when the winds shifted. Now that day had come. Diane was ready to betray Jack, and Victor was more than willing to help her. When Diane met with Victor, there was no hesitation in her voice as she made her request. She wanted Jack destroyed, and she knew Victor had the resources to make it happen. Victor was delighted by her proposal, his mind already racing with plans. Diane, who held crucial knowledge about Jabot's business secrets, their formulas, their strategies, their inner workings, was now ready to hand everything over to Victor. With Diane's help, he could bring Jack to his knees, bankrupt Jabot, and finally eliminate his greatest rival. Diane's offer was more than Victor had ever hoped for. Not only would Jabot fall, but Victor could also position Diane as the new CEO once the dust settled. Jack's empire would be obliterated, and the ultimate insult would be to have Diane, the woman who was once his loyal partner, sit in his place, ruling what was left of the Abbott legacy. The problem of Kyle and Diane. Victor, however, knew that this plan came with its own complications. Diane wasn't coming alone. Kyle Abbott, Jack's son, was also under Victor's influence. Kyle, fueled by his own resentment toward his father, had already been pulled into Victor's orbit. But Kyle and Diane were hardly on good terms. Despite sharing a common enemy in Jack, the tension between mother and son was undeniable. They couldn't stand each other, yet now they would have to work together if Victor's plan. For Victor, this was a challenge, but not an impossible one. He had manipulated more complex dynamics before. He knew that the key to keeping both Kyle and Diane on the same path was to remind them of their shared goal: destroying Jack Abbott. Their personal issues didn't matter, as long as their hatred for Jack outweighed their animosity toward each other. Victor planned to pit them against Jack in such a way that neither could walk away without the other. Diane would provide the insider knowledge, the weapons to dismantle Jack from the inside. Kyle, with his position and access, would help execute the plan, ensuring that his father had nowhere to turn as the company crumbled. Victor, ever the strategist, knew he would have to play the role of mediator, keeping the mother and son from imploding. But he was confident he could control them. After all, nothing united people more effectively than a common enemy. Diane's internal struggle, anger or loyalty. Despite the plans and promises, something gnawed at Diane. In the quiet moments, away from Victor and his calculated plots, Diane found herself questioning her decision. Was she really prepared to go through with this? Destroying Jack completely would not only ruin his career, but also his life. They had shared years together, good and bad, and at one time they had truly loved each other. Was she really ready to burn it all to the ground? Or was her desire for revenge simply a reaction to the hurt she felt from his rejection? Diane had always been a woman driven by ambition, but there had been a time when she genuinely wanted to build something lasting with Jack. That time seemed so far away now, clouded by betrayal, misunderstandings, and the pressures of the corporate world. The humiliation Jack inflicted on her had cut deep, but was it deep enough to justify destroying him entirely? Part of Diane still cared for Jack. She wasn't sure if it was love or just the memories of what they had shared, but she felt conflicted. On the other hand, the anger she harbored was powerful, and with Victor's promises in her ear, it was hard to resist the allure of taking everything from Jack, of making him suffer the way she had suffered. Would Diane really betray her husband, or would the anger eventually pass, leaving only regret? Victor believed he had her fully on his side, but Diane was not so easily controlled. She still had a choice to make. Victor's calculations keeping the alliance together. Victor, of course, was not oblivious to Diane's inner conflict. He knew that people, especially those driven by emotion, could be unpredictable. But he had faith in his ability to manipulate Diane's anger, to keep it alive long enough for her to follow through with the plan. Victor saw this as the perfect opportunity to dismantle Jack's life and legacy, once and for all. He had no intention of letting Diane back out. If necessary, he would remind her of Jack's betrayal,